Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to what should be our final installment for the civil rights during the 1950s and 1960s. Again, we've covered everything we talked about the Johnson and the Kennedy presidencies, talked about the civil rights during Eisenhower and Kennedy's presidencies, and now we're going to talk about civil rights during the Johnson administration. There will be a few more things that we need to learn about this unit. Again, we'll do that via the book and just activities in class, though. So anyway, let's get to it. All right, so the first thing to talk about is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So after JFK was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson, he decided to sign Kennedy's, not decided, he did sign Kennedy's bill into law. Again, as tough as it is to think about, Kennedy's death was actually probably one of the main things that helped get this civil rights bill passed so soon, because it was something that he was very passionate about, and it was something that he wanted to make a staple of his first term as president. And he was killed. So it was Johnson's job then to make sure that, as a remembrance of Kennedy, that we go ahead and we pass this Civil Rights Act of 1964. So what this does is that it eliminates segregation in most public places. It also gives the federal government the power to enforce it. And it created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Put a star by those things. Again, it's very important that you guys know that. This is the most significant legislative victory of the civil rights movement. Again, because this is not going to make everything equal, not yet. Again, there's going to be something similar that is going to be passed in 1965. But again, that is so this doesn't fix everything, but it is a huge leap forward because it does eliminate segregation in almost everywhere. And then of course the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is going to be very relevant, very helpful for African Americans and actually just any minorities to get jobs. So I want to talk about the Freedom Summer a little bit too. One thing that you'll notice was missing from the Civil Rights Act was voting. They mentioned nothing about voting, and this is going to be a major problem because voting rights in the South were still not obeyed. Okay, they were not, again, like African Americans should theoretically have the right to vote. They should, not theoretically, it's in the Constitution, but with the 15th Amendment, it says the right to vote shall not be, deterred based on race. Okay, so that is in the Constitution, but that is not followed by the South. They still have things such as poll taxes, grandfather clauses, literacy tests, all kinds of really crazy things to keep African Americans from voting. So the Freedom Summer is going to be in 1964. Volunteers are going to go down to the South in the summer of 64, and they are going to help African Americans register to vote. Now, in the South, this is very, very dangerous. Again, many of these volunteers, again, a lot of them were white, were going to be killed, shot, arrested, or beaten. Again, they're going to kind of put it under the guise of saying it is illegal for these people to have the right to vote without taking a literacy test, anything like that. Again, the movie Selma does a really great job of showing how things were. Like Oprah's character goes to try to register to vote, and the guy asks her like all of these like really hard questions. He says like, okay, you need to say every word in the preamble. And he says, how many federal judges are there in Alabama? And then she says the right number for that. And then he goes, name them. And it's like, okay, well, no one knows all 50 some odd judges. Okay, so again, he is intentionally trying to make sure that she cannot vote. And a lot of that is because they don't obviously the African Americans are not going to vote for the same people that the white Southerners are, because they don't, those politicians aren't going to appeal to their needs. So this is very important for the white people, the white Southerners, to keep the African Americans from voting. At the same time, it's very important for the African Americans to be able to vote so they can elect people that are going to actually help them and represent them fairly. All right, so after the Freedom Summer, this is going to lead to the Selma March. And in Selma, Alabama, again, this is a very difficult place to register blacks to vote. So in on March 7th, 1965, there was an organized 50-mile march to protest local whites' violence. So this is really important because, again, TV is really going to be a huge factor in this, because this is a peaceful march. They are marching, 50 miles to show the bring awareness to the bad things that are going on in Selma, the injustices that are going on in Selma, and the protesters actually, they had to stop because they were starting to get beaten by police. Again, police and then highway patrol literally stopped them, started using tear gas, started beating them with their clubs, anything like that, and they called it Bloody Sunday. And this is really, really horrible. But again, it's caught on TV, and all of these people from the north, from northern cities and northern states, they're going to see what's going on. The president is going to see what is happening in Selma. Just like everybody else, and it's going to really drive these people. And when I say these people, I mean the people in power, specifically Lyndon Johnson, to attempt to get these voting rights legislation passed, because we already passed the civil rights stuff, but clearly the voting rights, was in the back of people in the South's minds. They're like, well, everybody who passed the legislation is probably thinking, well, yeah, voting rights is definitely included in that. But of course, the Southern people, the Southern whites, they see that that's not included, and they say that's one thing that we can still, prevent them from doing. So anyway, 5 months later, after the Selma March, Congress is going to pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which again will make sure that the right to vote, again, it kind of takes the 15th Amendment and it gives the federal government the power to enforce it. So they will, again, now you will not be, your right to vote will not be restricted based on your race. Again, you see very famous pictures here of Dr. Martin Luther King walking with, the rest of the Selma marchers. Again, you see people here being beaten during Bloody Sunday. Again, the movie Selma is really good. They do a really good job of showing everything that happened there. All right, so the Voting Rights Act of 1965, as I said, this is going to outlaw literacy tests. And so this specifically, again, we'll actually have, I'm going to have you guys take a literacy test in class, and that is going to kind of show you how horrible these literacy tests were. And basically, so that that's the first thing, is it gets rid of literacy tests. It also allows federal registration of African American voters. So now you don't have to just usually you would have to go to your state, whatever your state or your county office, in order to register to vote. But now you don't have to do that. You can just register to vote at, at a federal office, which is going to obviously protect your rights because it's the federal government doing it, not the state government. So that's the second thing. And then the last thing is the 24th Amendment is also passed during the 60s, that is going to abolish poll taxes. So again, most people in, if you look at the South in the 60s, African Americans were more in poverty than the whites. So what some places would do is that they would say, hey, if a white person came to vote, they wouldn't really say, they would just allow them to vote. It wouldn't really be any big deal. And then an African American would come to vote, and they would say, okay, you have to pay the poll tax, of $5. Okay, and again, that doesn't sound like a lot, but again, your right to vote it's a right. It's a right and a privilege. You are supposed to just be able to do it freely. And some African Americans didn't have that money. So when now that the 24th Amendment abolishes poll taxes, again, no one is going to have to deal with that when they're going to vote anymore. So this is kind of the pinnacle right now of achievement. Again, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 are going to be huge strides for African Americans in their their push for equal rights. Again, unfortunately, there's still a lot of really bad stuff that's going to be going on, and it won't even get much better until the 80s. But there are some people that still say that that fight is continuing even today, and we'll talk about that a lot more in class, and then as we get closer to the present day in our quest through history. So anyway, so this we're going to talk. Oops, my bad. Okay, so by the mid 1960s, as I said, things like legislation was getting passed, but there were still a lot of issues, still a lot of racism. So in the mid-1960s, race riots started to break out in non-southern cities. And this is really important because we always kind of, back then in the 60s, they thought, oh, well, all of the problems are in the South. Like, that's not, there's aren't any problems with civil rights here in the North. And that's not the case. Because, again, we see these race riots, we see this unhappiness, this injustice that is going on in the northern cities as well. So Lyndon B. Johnson is going to create what's known as the Kerner Commission, and this is going to investigate the causes of the urban riots. And the Kerner Commission reported that that white racism and local police were to blame for these urban riots. Again, I put a star by this last bullet. Again, the report recommended financial relief for urban blacks. Okay, so they were saying that these people, these African Americans, have been in poverty for so long that it's hard to get out. So one thing that the government can do is, if they provide a way to get out, provide financial means in order to get them out of this cycle of poverty, it's going to help them to lead better lives. And that's one thing that the commission stated. Again, that's not something that is easily done in American politics. Again, a lot of people think that you're supposed to pick yourselves up by your bootstraps and just try to fix things on your own. But again, that's not as easily. It's much easier said than done, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in class as well. All right, my least favorite slide. So Martin Luther King Jr. Was a very, very important figure. Obviously, again, he was the pinnacle of nonviolent protest, and he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, by James Earl Ray. Again, this is a very big deal because he is the main voice for getting equal rights peacefully. And in response to his death, to his assassination, there were riots in 125 cities, which, again, is really unfortunate because that is exactly the kind of thing that Martin Luther King would not have wanted. So you see here, again, this is where he was assassinated. This was, he was coming out of his hotel room, and then James Earl Ray was on an opposite ledge, and he was able to shoot him from there. So after Martin Luther King dies, it kind of gets a huge shift in the movement happens. So in the late 1960s, cooperation with the government, I mean African American cooperation with the government was decreasing because very little was changing. So some African Americans and some other I want to say. Basically, African Americans, some of them were now embracing the idea of separating from whites. So it's like that idea that we talked about with Marcus Garvey, talking about the Back to Africa movement. Okay, they're not necessarily saying that they don't want to go back to Africa, but they are saying that maybe segregation, maybe it isn't possible to live together. So they were embracing that. Some African Americans were embracing that now. The idea of black power came to be during this time, became a slogan for militant blacks. If you don't know what the word militant means, right here, again, that just means aggressive. Not I don't want to say aggressive, but people who African Americans who are going to want to get their rights violently or protest violently, and this is. They believed in self-defense against whites' attacks. Again, Martin Luther King would always say never to fight back. Just if you are getting beaten or cursed at, you want to take it. You don't want to do anything else. But again, that is now we're kind of in this shift to radicalism. We're saying, hey, nothing's changing. We're trying to be nonviolent, and we're still getting treated like this. So maybe it's time to defend ourselves. And so basically this radical movement is going to seek justice, economic power, and African American representatives in positions of political power, federal leadership, and law enforcement. Again, in the 60s, guys, even in the South, even in the North, there are still going to be a majority of white people in power, in political power, in like police positions, anything like that, and it's going to like the African Americans are going to feel like that they're not being like adequately represented, and they're right. They're like, that is a really big issue. It was a big issue, and it is still even an issue today. You talk about the police officers in in all black neighborhoods. Again, like they are not, like the African Americans are going to maybe worry that those officers are not going to represent. Or they're not going to be able to protect them as well. Again, I'm not saying that is true, okay? But again, that is the kind of thing, like, if you you would want to see people who are going to be looking out for your best interests. Again, that is a big argument today. And again, to be clear, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying that is a feeling that is very real among different groups. Anyway, moving on. So last thing, we got 2 more slides here. My video's kind of getting a little long, so we're going to go ahead and finish up. So the Nation of Islam and black nationalism. The Nation of Islam was actually led by Malcolm X. Again, Malcolm X was an African American civil rights leader who had actually converted to Islam, and he thought that Islam was a lot more about equality than traditional Christianity that you see in America. They also focused very heavily on their African heritage. They promoted separatism, again, not integration. It wasn't really segregation. They wanted separate societies just for African Americans. And again, as I said earlier, this connected with black nationalism, which was a movement based on Marcus Garvey's ideas that that integration was not possible, that they should live separately from white people. But again, the most important part about the Nation of Islam and black nationalism is that it encouraged African Americans to be proud of their culture instead of trying to assimilate. So they didn't want to become they didn't want to be transformed into quote unquote like white people or white culture. They wanted to still maintain their own culture, but still be proud of that. Again, a couple things here. We'll talk about the Black Panthers in a second. Again, this here you see the very famous fists in the air. The fist in the air kind of becomes the symbol of black nationalism. All right, so I'm sorry, I was wrong. 2 more slides, and then we'll be all done. So the Black Panthers are led by Huey Newton. They are going to promote black power, and they're going to confront police who harass blacks. Again, you see how they're dressed, again with the leather jackets and then the black berets. So they are fighting for justice for African Americans. Again, if they see injustice, whether that be by the police or anybody else, they are going to violently sometimes fight against that. All right, last slide. The legacy of the Civil Rights Movement. By 1974, over 75% of Southern blacks had enrolled in integrated schools. Okay, so segregation, for the most part, is going to be over. So we have, again, 3/4 of Southern blacks who are now in integrated schools, which is good for them. Again, they're going to get a better education theoretically, and that's going to be a big step forward. The Civil Rights Movement did improve political and economic opportunities for African Americans, not just African Americans, but again, that's kind of our main focus of this presentation. And it also is going to inspire other groups in American society rather, to seek equality, like I said, such as Native Americans, women, and Hispanic Americans. We'll talk about that more in class. All right, guys, sorry for the video so long. I appreciate you watching. See you next time.